So we're going to sort of cover off on the why we're doing this, and I think the answer sits in sort of many things. We've had a lot of feedback from the industry over the last 3 years. We've done summits. We started the summit system 4 years ago. The first thing that came out of the first summit was education. It was lacking. It was atrocious. We needed to do something about that. The next one that came out of it was standards. The standards are slipped. They're disappearing. We need to do something about that. The third summit really identified the fact that we need to actually formalise this and actually create a manageable, achievable goal for the industry as a whole. Fragmentation was killing us. We needed to actually go in a different direction. So from that, we've been out on the road shows in New South Wales. We've been visiting the various states of the institutes and talking to them. And the same theme is coming up time and time again. Only on Facebook this morning, I was scrolling through looking for a Tom Panos video that I couldn't find, and gotcha. And what I came across was an interesting article from a company called Steps. Steps are a social media-based company. And what they had to say was exactly about what we're doing here today. Exactly, identified the issue is exactly the same as what we're here today. Obviously, I couldn't help myself. I had to make a comment and tell them about what was happening. But you know what? What happens in the industry is the same thought process starts permeating through in different ways, and it all heads in the same direction. The need is obvious. The fact that we want to be proud of what we do and get that as part of our modus operandi, how we operate and how we think, has led us to right where we are today. And as I said, it absolutely starts with training. Chris.
So obviously the tough part for us as agents is the consumer is not always right, but the consumer's got the right to publish. And that's the thing we've been feeling in recent times, that it doesn't matter how wrong they are, they're always going to be right to a certain extent. So the truth of social media is everybody's so interconnected. Messages move so much faster than what they did many years ago. And we're starting to see this speed and this evolution of business. Everything is happening faster. Cycles are happening faster. They're upon us before we know it. And, you know, honestly, I think the only thing that is going to be a constant in our future is change. It's something we just have to come to terms with. So what are the consumer expectations? We're now all speaking in our businesses about consumer experience. That's a core part of what we do. If we went back a number of years, we'd be talking about our key processes in selling and, you know, how we would be connecting with people. The thing that Steve said before that absolutely has to land with you today and you need to take out of this meeting is that we have a primary sense of duty to the community. That's a huge change for us as agents. We always knew and understood that we have an absolute duty to our vendor clients or our property management clients, strata clients, and on it goes. We knew that. I think we've dealt with that very, very diligently. But the reality now is the best agents see when they're out in the street and they're at open homes and they are generally dealing with the community is they look after their buyers, they treat them well, they give them great guidelines as to, you know, how they might buy a property. They certainly follow them up and support them. They look after the neighbours because they know there's an opportunity to list later on down the track. There's little doubt about that. But when you get that sense and you change your mindset that you are about the community, it means every interaction is about being professional and engaging. This is going to be a substantive change for all of us. And please understand the stick is like this picture here, that they're all going to tell each other pretty quickly. So if our intent is pure, if our effort is professional, I don't think we need to fear or worry about this.
And I think from that perspective, creating the change that we want, and again, Steve touched on this, we have a choice in this. We've got this change that's constantly been forced on us by government, and the reason that it's happened is because we're our own worst enemy. It just doesn't happen because government wants to change the laws or they'll put in underquoting or whatever it may be. It's the fact that we've behaved, and I'm being generalist here again, we've behaved poorly from the consumer's perspective, and we've got those things as a result. And we're constantly going down that same path. We're battling government on things that we have caused. So again, the opportunity to create the change we want based on the consumer experience has never been looked at before, but it has to be done collectively. We can be the masters of our own destiny. It's going to require commitment, massive amount of commitment. You can't do this without making commitment, and I think Steve pressed on that quite well as well. The fact that this is going to be a journey that's going to require us to all actually communicate properly. And I think that the level of cooperation that's going to make this happen is unprecedented. It hasn't been here before. We're facing an industry at the moment that really comes out of training with zero foundation knowledge. I had invited a lot of younger agents into the room, but they're all out busy doing deals. But anyway, that's okay. We'll capture them another time. But for those of you that have been around a while, you knew what you had to do to get your license, right? It was a reasonable amount of effort. Some places you can get it easier, some not so easy. But the reality is it didn't create foundation knowledge. People didn't know their product. They didn't even know the legislation they worked under. I had a meeting with a young agent yesterday who came to visit me, and I was talking to him about his obligations as an agent. He actually didn't understand, this is an agent that's run a business, didn't understand what an agent actually was. As an agent, you are the client. You are your principal. You are acting in their interest first and foremost above everything else. You have a piece of legislation that wraps around that. He didn't know a whole range of things about his obligations to his clients, consumers, whatever it may be. It's an agent running a business for the last 5 years. So it concerns me greatly that we've got this situation permeating through the industry and nothing's been done about it. Well, there's a chance to do something about it. So, I was talking to someone earlier today about, where is the industry leading as going down. It was Kimball, actually. I was talking about the commercial agents. He said, John, I think you're mistaken. Commercial agents are not where you think they are. Valuers are where you think they are because they're a professional organisation. Malcolm Gunningham's talked about this many, many times. The reason the Valuers Registration Act was repealed was because the API put themselves in a position where they didn't need that regulation anymore. And that's exactly where we see us heading. Chris?
So I think this is something Charles has got right. You have to position yourself as the trusted advisor. There's little doubt about it. But that is a really challenging space to get into, because the question is, what is a trusted advisor at this point of time? So much information is now just available digitally. So many people can do the research and understand their position more so than they ever have before. So what's the truth of the trusted advisor for us going forward, and in the context of community? Ultimately, we must be the ones that clearly interpret the marketplace, the opportunity, and help guide people in dealing with what is their most valuable asset, and that's the truth. And I think there's something pure and there's something quite interesting about being a real estate agent, and that is that we do help people meet their own personal goals. Most of the homes that we sell people into or manage, they've gone in and they've connected with that emotionally, haven't they? Yet certainly investors will go on an investment basis where we might be located in the right position, but we're the ones that interpret amenity and bring people together when they don't understand what they're buying. So I think the truth for us now, and at this point, if you really want to grow, you want to survive, you want to be an agency that's going to be there in the future, it's clearly understanding what our role not only is now, but what it's going to be, and how that must absolutely evolve to having people come to us first and always for advice. So we're of the view that it's time to pull our heads out of the sand. We've been sitting in there for far too long in what we consider the status quo to be. And the status quo is a falsehood. There is actually no such thing, because change is happening at such a rapid rate. Years and years and years ago, you could think the status quo existed for a few years. That was good. It's like your comfort zone. But change is so fast that the space that we're currently occupying is just so ripe for disruption. I know it's an overused word, and I don't like it much. I see it as a distraction more than anything. And so therefore we have to have reforms to change things. Well, I think the opportunity now is just pull our heads out of the sand and actually see that we can make that change happen. As I said, we've been isolationists. We've been living in silos as an industry. And we haven't ever harnessed the collective power that we have. We are a massive industry and we have huge collective power, but we've been siloed so much, and it's been a problem for probably the last 20, 30 years, and it's only got worse and worse and worse. So for this to change, that silo mentality has to change. Status quo has never served us well. The best agents have always been innovative, always stepping ahead. And again, we've said about this program, this is not going to suit everyone. The industry will not be 100% professional. It will be for some people, it won't be for others. But those prepared to pull their head out of the sand will certainly make that change happen, and I hope that you'll be all part of that. I think that's us. There's one more slide.
Oh, you're right, mate. Sorry. There was 5, now there's 6.
So one of the things we've been talking about, obviously, is disruption. And everyone does accept at some point of time there will be clear disruption in the industry. But, you know, as I move around the industry, what I often hear is people talking about, well, we're probably okay for 5 years. That's a scenario. Now, 5 years might accelerate. It might come to us far quicker. I don't know. What I do know is disintermediation's already at play. There are quite a number of different businesses that are taking out elements of what is traditional agency practice. There's also other areas that are disrupting our minds as we're at work every day. And, you know, I've just got a few examples there. If we look at New South Wales Fair Trading and the Complaints Register as an example, there's a number of you that run very big businesses that have quite a number of officers under you, and you know you're going to be on that Complaints Register pretty much every month. There's a number of you that run an individual business, and you know you run a good business and you'll never be on it. Is that fair and equitable, for example, and where does that headspace get taken up? Are you focused on properly looking after your clients and dealing with complaints, or are you more worried now just about the fact that you get on a list? These are things we've got to consider. There's the likes of the Purple Bricks. ANZ, here's a good example. You all have a bank that you bank with, and a number of you are ANZ Bank clients, and they are now advising your clients on property via their apps. You can go online, you can get a great report on your home, which actually now tells, the ANZ property report tells people what agents to go to. Have you downloaded one? I'd suggest you go and do it and have a good look at it. These are banks that are banking. Now, if you're in Germany, it's pretty typical that the property trades at the bank, so they literally put properties in the window in some of the German banks because they're selling the mortgage on, right? But that's not our country and that's not our way of doing business. And the others there, the open agents, Airbnb and the like, and we've certainly all been concerned about the rising cost of doing business, and using the example of Domain here perhaps. The truth for our businesses are fee compression is definitely an issue, and the concern is it's here to stay, and being a professional is about holding appropriate fees for a professional service. It's part of the reason we have to do this. We've got to get on and consider this. Fee compression brings about profitability compression, so your margin's going. You've got to consider. Now, many of us are out looking overseas to see how we can improve the margin in our business by taking jobs overseas and simplifying processes. Is that appropriate or not? Is that professional or not? These are true considerations. So as we all work together and think about what to do here, I said to John, looking back when I first started in the industry, now that I've got some grey hair and I'm no longer one of the young ones in the industry, I remember back to the Council of Auctioneers and Agents. And that was the starting point when I first started. And to be a member of that was an absolutely sensational thing, but even to be considered and to be licensed was equally a sensational thing. I see what we're doing here today is almost the resurgence of that time. You know, when a group of professional agents got together and said, we need to do something to keep the industry together and keep it going. That's certainly the place we're taking now. The Fidelity Fund started there. It commenced there. I have been involved in my career with needing to see and support consumers that have lost money from agents. And I've seen that Fidelity Fund in place and protect the rights of consumers. None of us ever want to be in that sort of situation, but I have seen that happen. If it wasn't for that group that got together at that point of time and understood what some of the risks were to protect the agents and agency and also protect their customers, we would never have had that. Ultimately, that was something that was passed on to government. And I think what we have to consider here is we don't want to work to a lowest common denominator. It was a very, very high bar that was set back in those times. And I think ultimately that's what we've got to consider, is this whole notion of not raising the bar from where we are now. It's just not good enough. We've got to set a bar that is appropriate for our futures. And, you know, I've got one child that's in agency practice now, but my youngest one is so very young, I'd love to see by the time he gets out of school, and if he wants to become an agent, he'll be potentially then third generation agent. If he wants to do that, I want to see that there's a strong, healthy industry for him to do it in. I'm sure his grandfather feels exactly the same way. So that's why we should all be here and operating. So ultimately, the true test of us coming together is that consideration of, in what space are we competitors? In what space are we out chasing for business and doing business? And in what space are we all working together for the benefit, the future of our industry, for the community at large? But importantly, for many of the people who are not in the room today, our employees, support staff and the like, who all have very great futures if we make some really good decisions. And I'm reminded of something that the conversation I had a couple of years ago with Brian White, and I'm sure he'll happily let me share this in this room today. But we sat down and we said, wouldn't it be a great world if you pretty much could share everything, but when it came to literally getting in the lounge room, you competed and the best person won. And I think that's where our future rests.